Welcome everybody to my channel. My name is Rainer. This is Rainierbooks. Today it's time for another single review. Another I've read something, and for the second time in a row it's a non-fiction book that I gave 5 stars. So no surprises here. I'm going to talk about Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. Let's get this video started, please. So Isabel Wilkerson she's an American journalist. She was born in 1961. She has worked for many years with the New York Times. She has been the bureau chief of the Times in Chicago, Illinois, and in 1994 she won the Pulitzer Prize for journalism for just doing her job as a journalist in Chicago, Illinois. Isabel has worked as a professor in journalism since I think the late 90s, and she has worked at several universities as a professor of journalism, one of them being Princeton University. After 15 years, that's a long time, isn't it? After 15 years of research and studies and preparations, she published her first book, The Warmth of Other Suns, the epic story of America's Great Migration, a couple of years ago, which tells the story of Afro-Americans who emigrated after slavery was officially abolished in 1865, who millions of Afro-Americans left the American South where slavery was basically performed and went and fled and emigrated to other parts of the country. And she wrote about this, and Jim Crow was introduced. The book was received with lots of awards, with lots of praise, and Isabel Wilkerson, a star, if she hadn't already been a star for her Pulitzer Prize, a star of writing books, non-fictional books of American history, was born. Last year, I think in April, she published, or her publisher published, of course, the book Caste, The Lies That Divide Us. This is published by Ellen Lane, which is an imprint of Random House Penguin in the United Kingdom. The book peaked at #1 of the New York Times bestseller list for nonfiction. Caste has the premise, or it starts from the premise, the thesis that America from its very early days has been shaped, has been constructed as a society that has established a caste system, that has white Caucasian Europeans on top of the society and black Afro-Americans at the very bottom of the society as the last caste. This is, so to speak, the concrete, the fundament on which everything is built. Wilkerson works, as many American scholars, in a very narrative way of developing her thesis, her presumptions, her analysis. And this makes Caste not only a very compelling and gripping reading experience, but it also makes this book and its contents accessible to millions of readers. And millions of readers and millions more is actually what this book should get. In the winter of 1959, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. went to India together with his wife Coretta. They were invited by the Indian President Jawaharlal Nehru for a month-long visit, and King and his wife arrived in a smaller city in India, and they sort of visited a high school where students went to, whose parents were members of the low caste, of the lowest caste in India. And he was presented by the principal by saying, "I would like to introduce you to a fellow untouchable from the United States." Martin Luther King was really astonished. He was surprised. He didn't know what to say. He didn't expect this. But then he understood the comparison. Those people from India and from the lowest caste understood that he, an Afro-American from the United States, was a member of the lowest caste. So Isabel Wilkerson compares the United States to the Indian caste system, but she also draws parallels to Nazi Germany and the situation of the Jews as the lowest caste between 1933 and 1945. She has traveled to both countries. She has talked to scholars and experts everywhere. Her bibliography of this book consists of 11 pages of books, of literature about the history of race, about the history of caste, which is really an enormous foundation, an enormous fundament on which she has built everything. The New York Times has called Caste an instant American classic because Wilkerson combines all the knowledge from the book that she has used for her research, work of sociologists, of historians. She uses her skill as a reporter to put a story together, and she also has a lot of skills as a writer because she pulls this together. She brings this together with lots of examples of both fundamental and horrible racism with violence, but also of everyday racism that we white people have or do sort of enact on Black Americans. She makes us understand once again that Donald Trump, I actually didn't want to name that name again, but Donald Trump was the logical consequence of Barack Obama, the first Black president who seemed to have take the stage in a post-racial age in the United States, was under the surface, directly under the surface, extremely, extremely loaded. And that's one of the reasons, Wilkerson writes, why Trump tried so hard to get rid of everything, of literally everything, every order, every executive order that Obama has instigated to get rid of this Black man who ruled the United States. The thought of a Black president was unbearable for millions and millions of white Americans, and it's open for interpretation if Make America Great Again is also a slogan that says, let's return to a country where a Black president is simply not possible. That's my thesis. She doesn't say that in the book, but it's really something that I thought about. 2042, as some and many of you probably know, is the year demographers have said when white people won't be the majority any longer in the United States. A thought that scares, frightens, enrages people so much that they are willing to vote against their own economic interests to prevent this from happening, to prevent this unthinkable from happening, that power and caste domination might slip away. In its sum, Caste could be a book that rightly diagnoses that the USA are am I allowed to say that? A effed up country where 346 years of slavery were followed by 100 years of Jim Crow. And until in our very days, a time of massive racial injustice, systemic racism, and regular killings of Black people like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and so many more. The diagnose that Wilkerson delivers in her book, the diagnose that she gives to the United States is heavy. It's unbearable in many ways. Because it's like someone is being told that he's more or less terminally ill. But it's also an answer to those who dream and speak of American exceptionalism. Is there a way out of this? Is there a vaccine, like out of the pandemic, a cure, a path, a chance for the country to get out of this? Yes, there is, says Wilkerson. But one of the first steps must be to look into the mirror and never, never again say, this is not who we are. This is exactly who we are. How we have been for hundreds of years. It is exactly who we are each and every day. A people who has lived in this caste system, who hasn't done much actually to change this for more than 400 years. Every year we celebrate Black History Month. We do it in February in the United States. We read a pile of books or we don't. In February in the US, in October in the UK. But what do we really do to change this? This is not only the United States. I have to think of Ben Judah's brilliant book. You know that I love this book. I would give it 6 out of 5 stars. This is London, that he wrote a couple of years ago, where he sort of analyzed the mixture, this diversity that London is consisting of, and how the city has changed with people from all over the world coming to London, living there in different spots and having good lives and having bad lives. In this book, Ben Judah says that there are so many different people in London, but the people at the very bottom of the society are the Black people working in the underground, in their yellow vests, the people who have, if someone commits suicide in the underground, the people who have to come and take away the blood, take away the bones and the tissue and everything that is left, the people who have to clean the vomit, to clean the blood and everything that is human waste in the underground. I remembered that when I read Caste. Wilkerson argues that a world without caste would set everyone free. This is a positive ending for a book that is very, very heavy, but even more necessary and important. It should be everywhere, and school children, I think, should read at least parts of it. There are so many examples of racial injustice, of everyday racism that our black friends encounter each and every day. We have not the singles and the slightest idea what it means for a black parent to wait for their son or their daughter on a Friday night in Cincinnati, in Los Angeles, or in New York. The risk that something bad happens to them is so much higher. The burden and the inheritance of racism is so strong and has come over so many generations that I think it will take generations until humankind, until we, white Caucasian Europeans, realize that we are all the same, no matter what color of the skin we have, that we only are born with different melanin. At the turn, let me give you an example what I was so shocked of reading here. At the turn to the 20th century, lynching cards were extremely popular in the United States. From like 1880 to 1910, for 30 years. They were distributed, collected, or just kept as a souvenir. I wanted to show one to you because I found one on the internet, but I let it be because it's too hurtful, so I let it be. You can Google lynching postcards if you can see this. For about 30 years, Americans send these cards as greeting cards, often unrelated to the event, like things like, dear friends in Louisville, dear family, blah, blah, blah. We wish you a happy Easter and hope to see you soon again. Yours, Gregory, Dave, Lucy, whatever. On the other side of the postcard, there would be a colorized picture, for example, 4 black men hanging lynched from a tree somewhere in the US. These postcards were abolished in 1908, but they were apparently sent for many, many more years afterwards in envelopes and hidden. And still in the 21st century, there are people who collect these cards. So make no mistake, this is a tough book, it's a necessary book, it's a painful book, but you can only heal if you stop lying to yourself. 2042 is a great issue. I listened to the great podcast. I'm gonna rave about it on Sunday. Again, I listened to the great podcast there's a discussion between Barack Obama and Bruce Springsteen. I think they have done 3 podcasts at least. And they also talk about race. And Bruce and Barack, sorry to call them with the first names, are talking about race. And Bruce Springsteen says in that episode, he says, it's all about 2042 with this beautiful hoarse voice. And Obama agrees. The turn of the majority to non-whites is the backdrop to what we saw when the Capitol was stormed on January the 6th this year in Washington, when accusations are made that a party, which is a democratic capitalistic party, wants to turn the country into a Venezuela, into a communist state. This is rubbish. The big thing luring behind is 2042. That's what I think. When old times, when Jim Crow ruled, these are the glorified times when America was great for millions of Americans. And that is so shocking. Let me finish to read to you one of the last parts of Isabel Wilkerson's Caste, a 5-star book, which 5 stars are not enough for. This is a masterpiece. It shakes you if you read it. It shook me when I read it. And this is necessary reading. We are not personally responsible for what people who look like us did centuries ago, but we are responsible for what good or ill we do to people alive with us today. We are, each of us, responsible for every decision we make that hurts or harms another human being. We are responsible for recognizing that what happened in previous generations at the hands of or to people who look like us set the stage for the world we now live in, and that what has gone before us grants us advantage or burdens through no effort or fault of our own, gains or deficits that others who do not look like us often do not share. We are responsible for our own ignorance, or with time and open-hearted enlightenment, our own wisdom. We are responsible for ourselves and our own deeds or misdeeds in our time and in our own space, and will be judged accordingly by succeeding generations. In a world without caste, instead of a false swagger over our own tribe or family or ascribed community, we would look upon all of humanity with wonderment, the lithe beauty of an Ethiopian runner, the bravery of a Swedish girl determined to save the planet, the physics-defying aerobatics of an African-American Olympian, the brilliance of a composer of Puerto Rican descent who can rap the history of the founding of America in 144 words a minute. All of these feats should fill us with astonishment at what the species is capable of and gratitude to be alive for this. In a world without caste, being male or female, light or dark, immigrant or native-born, would have no bearing on what anyone was perceived as being capable of. In a world without caste, we would all be invested in the well-being of others, in our species, if only for our own survival, and recognize that we are in need of one another more than we have been led to believe. We would join forces with indigenous people around the world, raising the alarm of fires rage and glaciers melt. We would see that, when others suffer, the collective human body is set back from the progression of our species. A world without caste would set everyone free. 5 stars, Pulitzer Prize. So this was my judgment on Caste, and apparently I loved the book very much. I hope that you read it, and it really is a great work of nonfiction by this incredible American writer and journalist, Isabel Wilkerson. Congratulations to you on this book. Thanks very much for watching this video. I see you again on Sunday with another wrap-up of this week that is slowly but slowly leaving us. Bye-bye.